Thank you for watching. My name is Les Ross. I'm a town planning consultant and I'm working for a developer who's bringing forward a battery energy storage system on a site near Ballynahinch. In a minute I'll tell you a bit about what that system, what the development's all about, exactly where it is. But to begin with, I just want to explain why we've put the video up. Most of you watching will probably live close to the site or have some sort of special interest in this proposal, or you may just have stumbled upon it. Whatever it is, we want to inform you about the proposal and hopefully get your feedback. And with any feedback you give us, we'll use that to help inform our design as we finalise our plans and eventually make a planning application. Once the planning application is made, it's important that if you're still interested in the scheme, you want to have your opinions heard, that you contact the planners directly at that stage. As the planning application works its way through the system, then you will have your say. So to begin, let me show you where the site is. I've just got an aerial photograph here showing Ballynahinch up in the top left of the screen. I've just marked up where the town centre area is there, and you can see the urban area fairly clearly there in that plan. The site is marked with a yellow dot down the bottom right of the screen. You can see Downpatrick Road up above the site and Drummoness Road off to the left in the picture there. So the site is along Crabtree Road, and if we just zoom in a little bit, this is a plan again showing the Downpatrick Road and the Drummoness Road. Hope that's clear enough, and marked up the Crabtree Road, which is this minor country road that runs in through the countryside between the two. Up the Crabtree Road there's a large NIE substation. Those of you who live in and around will know it well, but if you haven't been on the Crabtree Road, it's not something that's terribly obvious because it's not something that's seen from the Drummoness Road or the Downpatrick Road, and that's just because you're in real drumlin countryside here. You have all these hills and valleys, and the landscape very much hides the presence of the NIE substation. It can't be seen from the surroundings. So I've marked the site up with a red line. You see it just lies to the southeast of the site of the NIE substation site. Zooming in again a little bit further, this is an aerial image again, and it's very obvious here the NIE substation, this big block of hard standing with various bits of electricity kit inside the compound, just alongside the Crabtree Road there. I'll show again the site with a red line. It's just a part of an agricultural field which slopes up from the side of the Crabtree Road. In and around this area there's lots of overhead cables that are just coming in and out of the substation. The other features of interest here are Old Macrodraw, the ruins of an old church, and a graveyard in a more or less circular form. It's accessed up a lane up to the north of the NIE station, and just to the north of the lane there's a building and a yard which is commercial use going on in there. But the old church is an important feature, a very historic feature in the locality. So this next image shows the proposed site layout. Basically the scheme is a compound for pieces of electricity kit. The compound is a flat yard of stone. It's surrounded by security fencing and a raised earth bund and new hedging on the bund to help screen views of the compound. As you can see from the plan, the access is taken directly off Crabtree Road in the approximate centre of the frontage. So in a moment I'll tell you a bit more about what all the various boxes on the plan represent, but first it's important to understand why the battery storage facility is needed and why this site has been chosen. This is an image that I've taken from the Northern Ireland Electricity Operators website, SONI. And it shows how the electricity grid is laid out across the country. The whole system's based on a small number of large fossil fuel power stations, and there are high voltage power lines streaming out from these stations. The high voltage lines travel to a series of substations distributed around Northern Ireland where the voltages are stepped down to the type of 3-phase and single-phase electricity lines that serve the homes and businesses across the country, spreading out right to the remote parts of the countryside. As you probably know, we are moving rapidly to replace the fossil fuel power stations with renewable energy generators. So mainly those are large-scale wind and solar farms. And those installations are often found in the remote areas at the end of the established grid network. That creates an obvious problem because the grid was built the other way round. Another important issue is the fact that wind and solar energy is not available all of the time. They are intermittent generators. They don't make electricity when it's not windy or it's not sunny. So large-scale energy storage is necessary. As it is, the grid operators, Sony, they need to make fairly radical changes to the system to allow green energy to replace the old power stations. And part of that solution, that radical change to the system, is to build big batteries on the grid. And there's 2 places where that's feasible. One, at the existing NIE transformer stations where the voltages are stepped. And 2, at large-scale wind farms or solar parks. In the last few years, 2 large battery storage systems have been built in Northern Ireland, and I've been involved with the construction of both of those. One's a site beside a large transformer station in Tandragee, and there's another one at Tamnamore. Now, there are other systems being built elsewhere around the country too, but those 2 systems are operational, and they already help to balance the load on the grid. Effectively, they are part of the modernisation of the grid to make it more resilient, to help us generate our own power rather than importing coal and oil and gas from elsewhere, and to help meet our international targets and obligations in terms of combating climate change. And finally, to make sure we keep the lights on and provide an efficient, affordable electricity system for businesses and for the whole community. In other words, battery storage is an essential part of the solution to modernise our grid. The substation at Crabtree Road, Ballynahinch, is an important part of the grid. This is where high voltage electricity is stepped down and then distributed to a huge area to the southeast of the country. In grid terms, therefore, it's an excellent place for a battery energy storage system. So given that the battery system needs to be as close as possible to the substation, there's only a few places where it could be built. On this site you have a series of constraining issues. So you've got the housing to the north, you've got the old churchyard, and then the wider landscape, a very sloping drumlin landscape. So the site itself is absolutely obvious. It's ideal because it's right beside the substation. It's well removed from the neighbours or any sensitive designations. It's relatively flat. It has road frontage and it's well hidden in the landscape. It's an absolutely perfect site. So let's look at the draft layout again. We have a team of people working on the project, including technical advisors in electricity infrastructure and the health and safety issues, an ecology expert considering the plants and animals, a heritage expert mainly considering the relationship with the old church, an acoustic expert to make sure there's no impact on local residents, and a drainage engineer. Essentially, the scheme involves creating a big compound with the total land area being around 2 acres. That compound will be flat, it will be covered in stone with a series of pieces of electricity kit. The compound is surrounded by a security fence and by an earth bank as a tall bund with hedging and vegetation to screen it. As you can see, access is directly off the Crabtree Road, as I've said before, approximately at the centre of the site frontage. The construction process would begin by stripping back the topsoil and then using that to create the bund. And that means that no material needs to be moved off the site. Stones would be brought in and laid to create the works area, and then the kit would start to be brought in, cabling laid around the site underground, and the whole process would happen within the site, all of the construction works within the site, and it would take around 6 months to complete. It's reasonable to characterise the development works as if it was just an extension to the existing NIE compound. So I think the best way to describe a battery energy storage system is to show you some photos of the existing schemes that I've visited. The pink rectangles on the image we've got on the screen at the minute represent the battery containers, and there's 12 of them shown. So here's a picture of one of the battery storage containers from a site in England. As you can see, it's a standard 40-foot long shipping container. It's been modified and then filled with batteries. This image shows what it looks like inside. They're simply racks of batteries, and these batteries store the excess electricity on the grid, and then they discharge it really rapidly when it's required, and that helps to balance out the grid. Here's a picture of the other side of the container. It shows the air conditioning units on the ground in the middle of the picture. You can see the ductwork connected to the top of that shipping container. These air conditioning units keep everything cool, but really they're only necessary on the warm days, so you'll appreciate that they're not always necessary in the Northern Irish environment. Another element of the system are the inverters, and here is a photo of a typical row of inverters. Again, these are in modified 40-foot shipping containers, and there would be a row of these within the site. Within the site there are other pieces of kit to move the electricity back and forth from the grid. This is an example of some heavy duty kit that's fairly typical in these types of sites. It's just worth noting though that the scheme will not involve the creation of any overhead cables beyond the site itself. The battery storage site will be connected directly to the existing NIE substation via underground cabling. There are also 2 control rooms within the site, and this is where the system is managed. As illustrated in the photographs, these are just buildings, standard small scale buildings. The whole site is surrounded by palisade fencing for security, and this picture shows a site in England shortly after it was completed. In this example there's no earth bonding, but in Ballynahinch, however, the fencing and the compound will be well hidden behind the new earth bond and new hedging to help everything to integrate into the locality. So let's return to the layout again. Hopefully the photos I've shown you a moment ago give you a better idea of all the rectangles that are shown in this plan and what they represent. In the most basic terms, the scheme's a compound full of shipping containers, which in turn are full of batteries and other bits of kit. Overall, these are fairly benign types of development. Once the scheme is built, there will be very little activity on the site, just engineers checking periodically and doing maintenance, similar to the existing NIE substation there on Crabtree Road. So hopefully you know more now about battery energy storage systems. You know where the site is, and it just remains for me to say thank you very much. So what would be excellent is if you would get in contact with us and give us some feedback. The neighbours will already have questionnaires and forms, information that's been sent out in the post. But if you want to, you can call us just to have a chat about the proposal. There's a number on the screen now. You can write to us, that's our address, or send us an email, and we'll take on board all of those comments. We'll try and inform you as best we can, expand on some of the things that questions might have been raised during this video. But just remains for me to say thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.